safely, affordably, reliably, and efficiently. Yeah, so I'm Karthik, I'm the chair, and I'll pass it over to Kelly, and she can do a quick intro, and then we can, if you can just kind of pass it on to other folks as we go.
Hi there, Kelly MAACDC resident, non-driver, and motorized wheelchair user. So I guess you could say I drive a motorized wheelchair. But anyway, I will pass it over to Naomi.
Hi there, I'm Naomi. I'm also a non-driver and also a wheelchair user. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out who else is on this call today.
I'll go. This is Lizzie.
Yep.
I'm also a DC resident, wheelchair user, am a driver, so do rely on accessible parking, but also a transit user. Thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Zach, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Zach Smith, District Department of Transportation Liaison to the MAAC. And I will pass it to John. John, I don't. If you're speaking, you're on mute.
No worries, John. If you can, if you are able to unmute, that's great. If not, maybe we can go to Ashton.
Happy to go. My name is Ashton. I am a person who does not have a disability myself, but I have loved ones with disabilities, so I'm here as an ally. I will probably be off video for most of the meeting because I have dinner to cook, but I'm always really thankful to be able to be in this room and hear from you all. I live in Southwest, and I also do not, I don't own a car, and I use all the other modes pretty much, except for segways. I don't know, I never got onto the Segway train, but yeah, I think maybe Eileen, I don't know if you've gone yet.
I haven't gone yet. Karthik introduced me. So I'm Eileen McCarthy. I'm a member here as a member of the public, non-driving, non-wheelchair using, pedestrian advocate, and former member and chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Council. If John's there, I will pass it to John.
No worries, John. If you figure out your mic situation, want to introduce yourself. Or hopefully he doesn't leave for good. Hopefully he's just figuring out his way. But hopefully we didn't scare him away. But yeah, so why don't we just kick off? So we wanted to, so just kick off with any announcements that folks have. So there was an AAC meeting for. This is a Department of For-Hire Vehicles. Kelly, do you have background on this?
Yeah, so I wasn't available to attend, but I do understand that they do a recording and hopefully we'll send some notes. My understanding is that they were going to be presented the information about the AV pilot program that DC is in the midst of approving. And so they were going to get the kind of information that we had received earlier about that. I did have a question that I was hoping they would ask, and that is about making sure that wave vehicles are a part of that. And she, Faye, said that she would try to find out, and that they were talking about having Waymo at the next meeting. So if I'm available to attend, I will do so. The only other thing of note that I saw from the material, since I couldn't attend, was that the number of wheelchair accessible vehicle cabs that were taking trips continues to decline. So just making note of that, because I've been making note of it everywhere I can. And as a segue, not a Segway machine, but a segue, tonight on NBC4 at 7:30, They're doing a story about the lack of wheelchair accessible taxi service. I was interviewed, I think Naomi was. So if folks wanted to tune into that and share that coverage, just to raise awareness about the issue, that would be great. And if there's a link afterwards, I'll try to find it and send it around. Yay, Naomi! She's in it too. Great.
Yeah, I just put in the chat. I'm also in this segment, so we're looking forward to seeing it.
Cool. That's fantastic. Yeah, if you can definitely send that our way, we can put these into our minutes as well. Yeah, and especially as kind of Waymo has made an announcement to come to the district or wants to come to the district next year, it'd be kind of great for us to weigh in on things. We've already shared our perspectives with the director of BFHV with the letter, but I think ongoing engagement I think will be great. Nao, do you want to do a quick update on recruitment?
Sure thing. So we have had an interview and connected with an individual from Ward 5. She's a Ward 5 resident who is visually impaired. She just had to, she's now in the process of completing the form, which I've also hyperlinked here, and I'm happy to share that as well. But we are almost on our way to getting our fifth council member. So I will continue my outreach, and I have a sync scheduled with I believe that they're the student advisor at Gallaudet. They're in charge of student events and student involvement, residential life kind of thing. So they're an adult. So just trying to figure out to get someone from the hearing impaired community, and hopefully we should be up and running soon.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Nao. Cool. Any other general announcements that folks want to make before we move on? Okay, so we were hoping to have the director, we had Director Kirschbaum scheduled. Unfortunately, she had something come up, so she can't make it today, but we're hoping that she'll be able to come to the May meeting instead. So she's just rescheduling. But they DDOT did send over some initial responses. And what I thought what we could do is we could kind of take a little bit of time to just go through these ourselves and kind of talk about, if this was your question, you can talk about the motivation and then talk about kind of what you're hoping to see in the response, and then also kind of discuss their response a little bit. So that way we can kind of, hone in on kind of a few things that we can talk to about the director with. I've gone through these. And I think it's worth it for all of us to discuss together. Cool. So the first, this first measure. Okay. So Lizzie, you may not have seen this, but I have put together a document that basically, and some analysis that basically shows, if you take all of the ANCs and put them a dot in the middle of it, of each of the ANCs, the advisory neighborhood commissions, and you time out how long it takes to get to every other dot. So there are 46 ANCs, and to get to each one of the other 45 ANCs, it takes on average 2.5 times longer to go by transit than by car. So basically, a trip that takes 20 minutes by car would take on average 50 minutes by transit. And this kind of traps us into this, bad, vicious cycle where even people who don't particularly like to drive will choose to drive because it's the fastest way. And then there's like all sorts of negative externalities that come along with people choosing to drive, because that creates more traffic. More traffic makes the driving experience worse, and lots of congestion. But especially, but this is especially bad for people who are too old, too young, too poor, or too disabled to even have the option of driving. So they're kind of locked into this 2.5 times. And this is a type of metric that I really like, because it very clearly crystallizes hey, there is something deeply wrong with our transportation network in DC. And basically it's trapping all of us, even drivers, into this pretty bad cycle where the best way to get around is by car. So more people are going to drive cars, and also the people that can't or won't drive cars are just getting screwed. And it just, there are hours and hours and days and that are just lost because they're stuck in transit. So I was a bit underwhelmed. So what DDOT said what DDOT said here was their similar measure was the number of people who are within a 30-minute bus ride to employment and activity centers. I mean, I guess it's somewhat similar, but I was kind of underwhelmed with this because, basically, we want high quality options for people, and the more options that people have that are not just cars, that just, all that does is, if people have more options, but especially more reliable options, that helps everybody, including drivers, but especially people who don't have the option to drive. So it doesn't totally answer this question. And I'm wondering, so one, I just wanted to pause and get I have some thoughts, but I would love to get other folks' thoughts on this. Is this
This is Lizzie.
Yeah.
I'll just echo, I was equally underwhelmed by the response. I mean, I think you all know, one of my big things is sidewalks, because if you can't get down the sidewalk, then basically throw all public transit out the window. You can't get to the mechanism of transit. And DC has thrown MAACDC at me as their evidence of a complete and systematic response numerous times, and it's just simply not. I mean, I look at it and I have my kind of go-to areas, just my litmus test for, is this capturing where I know is block after block after block of egregious EDA violations, and they're never on this map. And I think, the response just also failed to acknowledge the fact that, okay, quote unquote, 70% of your sidewalks are in good or excellent condition, but where are those located, right? And it's going to be, okay, maybe in your metro centers, your higher income neighborhoods, but it's disadvantage piled on disadvantage when your failing infrastructure is in communities that already have compounded, issues and barriers. So
100%.
I also found the response to be maybe not surprising, but underwhelming, and just the acknowledgement of what everyone is raising through their points. Over.
Yeah. Oh, I should also mention too, if so, this particular, we can call it a time tax metric. It's significantly worse in Ward 8. It's 3x in Ward 8. So if you're either starting or ending your trip in Ward 8, it's on average 3 times as long to get anywhere by transit versus a car.
Karthik, I think that's worth raising.
Yeah.
And I would, I echo what you and Lizzie are saying, and I would like to ask more, where do they do they know where these pain points are?
Yeah.
And are they working on them? And I think the other, the bus priority team looking at two places or two streets,
Yeah.
it to me is not sufficient. I mean, and then, the other question is what are other cities doing that brings down this metric that we can adopt? Like, it just seemed like kind of kind of an unaware, not really thinking about an answer, and I would like a little bit more depth.
Yeah. 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 Oh, go for it, Zach.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I totally, your comments are understood. I will say that in terms of the bus priority team, I don't want it to seem like we're only looking at two different corridors in terms of our before and after studies. But what I could do is ask the team if they would come and present, and you could discuss the transit time tax with them.
Cool.
Only because we are trying to promote our transit only lanes, and that is our main goal. And so looking at these different measures and metrics, when I asked them this question, they were very interested in your time tax analysis. So I think they would be really excited to come and join. But I don't want it to seem like they only looked at two different areas, but we are trying to figure out the best way to sort of present this information. And yeah, we're trying to promote as many transit lanes as we can, but
yeah,
I definitely ask them to come.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for them to. I mean, we're hopefully, like they're the bus being the by far the most accessible vehicle in the in DC transit or DC transportation. Like we're 100% their allies. We want to support their work, and yeah, and this is basically kind of a tool that I think kind of would support this in this type of framing of like, hey, but the reason that I wanted to specifically bring this up is that like it touches a lot of different things that hopefully the director and the director's like leadership team like really care about. Like we want to move more people safely, efficiently, accessibly, and more people do get moved like more efficiently, safely, et cetera, by bus than by car. And as long as this number is so high, then we're trapping ourselves into this cycle. So that's what I would definitely like to dig in with the director on this. But yeah, I mean, would be great to have the bus priority team come in and talk to us about this. Cool. Any other thoughts on this particular? Otherwise, we can move on. Another one, yeah, same. This is actually in the similar vein. Like, if the sustainable DC has a goal of 75% non-car mode share, and are we on track to meet this? If not, so I don't know if this is so like 75% commute trips by non-auto modes by 2032. Do we have data? I don't know, Zach, do we have data that kind of shows where we are?
Usually when Sustainable DC, when they ask us for like progress reports and updates,
Yeah.
It's more qualitative,
Yeah.
rather than like a metric. And in that report, it was specific to commuters. So we would look at like census data,
Right.
if we were to find something to see. We know that things have changed significantly with COVID and the federal workforce being called back to work for now. So that data is a little bit skewed, but do we have our own sort of commuting data? We have GoDC Go. So we could look to that as a metric. but normally we would look to the census.
Basically just kind of, it's along the same type of lines of like, hey, we want to get more people, we want to like less cars, more people on transit and non-car modes. And basically if we have that, like that, it's in the same vein of like getting us out of this like car dependent vicious cycle. But yeah, cool. The principles. Okay, cool. So the third question, arterial space usage. Okay, so this is where we explicitly brought up the first priority being sidewalks. So I wonder. So it says that it went to the executive team. Can we bring up the principles again now? Because our first priority is so our first priority is sidewalks, or it's actually, I think it's linked in this document. If you scroll if you scroll up, it's actually it's linked in MAAC's arterial street space usage. Oh, maybe not. It's also, I can put it in the chat, or I can share. It's maacdc.link/principles. Yeah. So this here, so Lizzie, to your point about sidewalks, I wonder if, should we say, is there anything else that we want to like call out specifically on sidewalks of like absolutely no gaps, or something like that? Something, or actually,
well, I would just start with going. Oh, you mean in our criteria? We're past the response document.
Oh, we'll come back to the response document. But basically they like in that. So we asked them if we got if they had distributed the principles, all of the principles document to all of the engineers, and they said that they had distributed to the executive team, but they didn't really address sidewalks here. And I think it might be worth, like, if we're using this document as kind of a guide for our discussion with the director, maybe like, kind of coming up with, as like a specific thing that we wanted to focus our discussion on this particular question. So like, I think sidewalks being, there are many things that we want to bring, like that the principles, I think, it's a great discussion document. But like sidewalks being our #1 priority, I wonder, like, do we A, want to alter this document at all to make it clear, or B, make a note for ourselves about like when we talk about this document with the director hopefully in May, like what specifically we want to, what specifically we have our, we want to focus the discussion on.
Well, look, like, I don't think you reinvent the wheel here. I mean, we want ADA compliant sidewalks. So, I mean, if we need to nuance that in our principles document, sure. But, I don't think we need to go into further detail beyond that. That's my perspective. I mean, folks have done the work to define what makes an accessible sidewalk versus not.
Yeah.
One thing just to note, I know that Lizzie has brought attention to the fact that having sidewalks that are cleared of snow is helpful, and you did say that edits were possible. So I'm wondering if there's a way to include that in #1. It's wide, smooth, and connected, but something like sidewalks with curb cuts on both sides of the street and cleared of, snow and debris or something like that to highlight that really important point.
That's a good point, and it could be obstacles of many kinds: snow, trash bins, scooters, etc.
So my thought and recommendation would be, again, to stick to ADA compliance for this, like the parameters of the sidewalks. I just get nervous if we start laying out, curb cuts or no gaps, etc., that we're limiting focus on like the actual breadth and the full scope of what makes a sidewalk accessible. But with Kelly, I think you're raising a good point, and maybe there's something we can say here around without obstructions, right? For example, no scooters, like the public scooters and bikes and trash bins, etc. And that way that leaves it more open for interpretation. But again, we're aligning with preset standards about what makes an accessible sidewalk versus not.
Yeah. So, okay. So what if we rejigger this, highlight yellow. So, we can change this to, ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the street, that are free from, obstructions, which light poles, snow, scooters, e.g. Utility poles, snow and scooters.
Could even be tree roots, because I've
Oh yeah, totally.
been places where I couldn't pass.
Yep. Utility poles, tree roots, snow, and sidewalks. So what if we change, because wide, smooth, and connected are all encompassed by ADA compliant, right?
Yeah, so I see tree roots as, hopefully, when you say ADA compliant, right, that gets that lips, grade, everything that a tree root would fundamentally violate. But I do think it's important. Did you put trash bins on the example list?
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. Trash bins. Cool. Yeah, so basically the proposal is to replace wide, smooth, connected sidewalks with curb cuts on both sides of the street to ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the street, that are free from obstructions, e.g. utility poles, tree roots, snow, scooters, and trash bins.
I like it.
Cool.
If we go back to question 3, I have a couple thoughts in addition to the sidewalk. I'm wondering if there were any questions or if the executive team wanted more details on what we're thinking. I would love to know that. I would also love to know, in updating MAACDC, are they interested in talking with us? I hope. So because that was mentioned at the end that they're updating that. So I guess I just I don't know, I wanted a little more engagement, I guess. That's maybe just a discussion about it.
Yeah, I wonder, does it make sense for us to like put together like okay, thank you for your response. Here's like here's some comments / additional questions that we have about your response that we'd like to discuss in more detail or something like that?
I'm open to it, or if we just, say these are the couple things we wanted to talk to you about in May.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Yeah.
And just say we just wondered if you, on the things we've talked about here, like follow-up questions or something.
Yeah. So this is what they say. So the principles are distributed to the executive team. Okay, so actually before that, like, should we also ask for this to be distributed more widely than just the executive team? So
I
basically,
would say yes, unless they can convince us that the executive team is making informed decisions based off of the guidance we're giving,
yeah,
right?
me too. This is basically where I am as well. Cool. So that's one thing that we should bring up. Maybe we can just be noting that in highlights. So cool. Okay. Then what they said, safe and sustainable multimodal transportation network, ensuring, although the minimum width for sidewalks to meet ADA guidelines is 3 feet, our DEM calls, our design and engineering manual calls for a minimum of 4 feet where applicable. That's all they say about sidewalks here.
It would be nice to have a little bit more about what that means, maybe for a layperson.
Yeah.
And I think Lizzie bringing up like all the places that she knows that have poor sidewalks, can they speak more to the plan for fixing those areas?
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, so I think, right, like my first question about this would be to point to their response to the very last question of the document, which alludes to 70% of let's call them compliant sidewalks.
Yep.
Right? The tool that they share does not support that. So I want them to, basically, I want to increase scrutiny of, okay, how did you calculate that 70%? Because I already have skepticism over the accuracy of it, but I want them, like, they can have an opportunity to convince us that it is systematic, that it's regularly reviewed, that it's thorough, that assessment of sidewalks is being done by folks actually, traversing the sidewalk and assessing it for tree roots and, obstruction and decomposition and all of these various things. And then I want to know specific to PACC, which they pointed to again, they can, I've gotten PACC since numerous times. The capture, I'm in the capture areas that I know to be extremely problematic, which to me already, like, again, I skepticism over what this school is actually.
Yeah, one thing
what's read on this.
One thing that would be good, I feel like that would make the discussion good or even better is, like, can you take some pictures and like just point to some discrepancies on this thing that we can bring up when we talk to the director?
Yeah, I have a 50-page document on the Rhode Island Ave corridor.
Perfect.
And if you look at Rhode Island Ave, there's, it's
That's
not
great.
lit up at all.
That's great. So then basically what we can do is, so this document here, we can continue to do this together right now. And I think it's worth it to go together, to take meeting time and go together through this document, but then also add to this document. So this is their responses, but I think we can just add in yellow highlights, like additional things that we want to bring up for during the May meeting. So link your document, Lizzie, and like when we get to talking about sidewalks, like you can specifically, like, share your screen or whatever and kind of toggle between MAACDC and Rhode Island to show, like, hey, this is actually, like, this is not actually capturing reality, and this is problematic because, and this is, and here's, we've done a lot of research on this. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. All right, nice. Okay. Nice. So then next, yeah, so then we'll just say, so when we're back here, we'll just say, mean, we could even pull up our sidewalk discussion right here to this point. So it's just like, you know, gaps. You know, so when is, you know, to a lay person, what is applicable, or when is 4 feet applicable? Yeah, and also, how are we ensuring quality data? See below conversation question. Cool. And then DDOT is currently working on several plans for curbside management, bus priority, freight, et cetera, et cetera. So they talk about 1 Georgia Ave Northwest bus priority project is evaluating 24-hour dedicated bus lanes similar to MAAC's principles. Additionally, DDOT is piloting the U Street performance parking zone, which will see parking charges changes throughout the day. I thought they already did this in Chinatown, so I'm not sure why they need another pilot, but whatever. Dedicated accessible parking will be available within this zone, while accessible parking users must pay the prevailing rate. They can stay in the space for up to 4 hours. Yeah, it's like kind of underwhelming also on this front, but I think we can bring up these 2 points of like distributing it beyond the executive team, and then also like having, maybe this is a good place for us to bring up have a larger sidewalk conversation as well. I think this is Kelly. This was one of your questions. Does DDOT explicitly recruit non-drivers, including disabled people, to participate in guidance on other advisory committees?
Yeah, and with the previous question mentioning updating MAACDC,
Oh yeah,
wondering if that's an opportunity to be recruiting disabled people and or engaging the MAAC.
Yep.
And I guess when I meant this question, I was thinking more globally.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking like project specific, because I'm wondering if just more understanding of disabled pedestrians would be helpful to DDOT. Anyway, I'm not sure this is the answer I was expecting.
Yeah. But we can specifically like ask for a commitment to be involved in MAACDC updates. Yeah, perfect. Cool. And then feel free, like if folks have additional thoughts or questions, just feel free after the meeting to just go into this document. I think this should be editable for all of us. It is editable by all of us. Great. So just go in and edit and just add your own questions in yellow highlights. Cool. Okay, so there are 3 types of significant safety hazards, sightline safety hazards for each of the following. Exactly what 311 process should citizens use to report? Government alone breaking the law with illegal sign placements, motorists alone breaking the law with illegal parking beyond the sign, and then both government and motorists breaking the law with illegal sign and illegal parking. So yeah, so they say use roadway signs and use parking enforcement. So we have, oh, well, okay, yeah, so that's fine. So what they're saying is use roadway signs for a misplaced sign indicating that people can park too close to a crosswalk, causing a sightline issue, or parking enforcement for for cars that are blocking sightlines that are parked illegally. So here we ask, okay, like for a specific timeline, when will all high injury road network segments be compliant with DC sightline laws, and then have hardened daylighting infrastructure. So these are the high injury network segments that are in planning, design, or construction. Okay, that doesn't totally answer the question. Maybe this is a good time for us to bring up the daylighting, daylighting form. Okay, yeah, so I've been talking to folks, so Jay Swiderski on the Pedestrian Advisory Council, they're also very concerned with daylighting. And also John from Bicycle Advisory Council, maybe this might be a good opportunity to collaborate with them. We haven't kind of specifically talked to them about this, but it might be a good way to collaborate with them as well. But basically, instead of just telling people to only submit 311 tickets, the thought is potentially we can submit 311 requests for signs that are in the wrong place to be moved, and then also for hardened daylight infrastructure through 311. But given that we've had such a difficult time getting some of these corrected, actually just start tracking these ourselves. So Neo, can you share what we've come up with so far? And maybe you can just kind of talk through what the idea is.
Yep. So here we're creating a visual guide to help individuals understand how to report daylighting issues. And so here we're going to share an image showcasing what it looks like what it should look like with having a car parked correctly 25 feet away from the crosswalk. So the first step is identifying the safety hazard. That part will be updated. And then the step-by-step process of submitting a 311 request. These pictorial images are mainly to help with the submission of a roadway sign request. And then we'll be adding in the one for the other option that the director shared. We can report incidents through, any daylighting violations through that. And so once individuals get through the process of completing the 311 request by answering in all the questions, they'll get their service request number, which we ask them to keep so that they can go ahead and use that request number and input it on the survey that we're still working through. And that way we're capturing the information through our type form, and then starting to go ahead and visualize that by adding it to a map to show where all the issues are mainly happening, and then also making sure to follow up with all the individuals who submit a type form to see if their request has been closed or not, which is usually, sorry for going so fast, which is usually something that's shared right on the first page of the app. That'll let you know whether or not the request has been closed or is still being looked into.
So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically the core idea here is like if we can get some like just we all see this all the time where there's like a car parked right up against a crosswalk that's super dangerous, especially for people who are either slower or slower in moving or lower to the ground. And we brought this up like several times over the course of the year. We wrote a whole letter about it. We got a non-committal response to it. And basically the idea here is just like, let's just create our own map of saying like, okay, we've gone through the process. Like this particular place is now like, we submitted this, 200 days ago. It's still problematic. And it's just like a way for us to engage everybody in this. So it's not just like submitting 311 and it's going out into the ether and nobody ever hears from it again. It's actually like, we've got our own database of all of these places where we've got a picture, we've got a 311 request, and this thing is still not done. So yeah, more soon on that. Hopefully we can like flesh out this entire guide. We have the draft of a form, and then we can ideally start populating a map with this type of stuff. And then similar, like we could do something similar on sidewalks too, actually. Like if there, there are, right now, like when you submit something on 311 for a sidewalk that needs to be repaired, like that kind of just goes out into the ether. And sometimes these get closed without any action taken. And this is kind of a way for us to maintain our own database. So I'm just throwing that out there if that's something that someone wants to is interested in taking on. We've got the infrastructure, we've got the Typeform infrastructure. So daylighting could be a good way to start off this.
I mean, I guess what you're talking about is essentially like an oversight mechanism.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You're saying, how can we increase accountability by having the data to hold folks, hold the city accountable for the en masse, like aggregate number of violations for problem A, B, or C. I mean, like I'm supportive of that, but to me, it's still downstream. And at the end of the day, like the city should be taking on responsibility for cataloging violations and following up on them.
100%.
So I guess I just feel compelled to say.
No. I 100%.
It's a lot of work.
This is a lot of work. Ideally, it's spread over a bunch of people, though. Like there are like I don't know if you tuned into some of the DDOT advisor or oversight hearings, but there were like multiple people who like have brought up, and some of them have done like very extensive work on documenting sidewalk issues. Like, and I feel like we could get some allies, and we're never going to be comprehensive, but at least we'll be able to point to, okay, like here are whatever it is, 50 or 100 or 200 like requests that we've like documented, photographic evidence, like things that we've said, hey, this is a problem. If you agree, and then we say, hey, this is 200 days old, or this is it's been whatever a year, like this, and it's still not fixed. I think ideally, yes, I totally agree with you, Lizzie, that like we're not even thinking about this because like there's someone who actually like executes correctly, and like and 311 is all that one needs to do, or even better, 311 is not something that we do at all, because people are actually like going and in the course of people's jobs actually like if you're working for DDOT, you see a busted sidewalk and you get it fixed. Like, so nobody has to report it. No citizen has to report it at all. But I mean, I think we all know that system is not there. And basically without any data, we don't really have anything to actually point to and say like, hey, like other than kind of, one anecdote at a time, like we don't have anything systematic to say like, hey, this is like, this is a systematic problem, because here are 50 examples of, where there's like daylighting sign issues or car parking issues because there's not hardened daylighting infrastructure, or 50 places where there's like, you know, bad busted sidewalks that are like not ADA compliant that really need to get fixed ASAP, but it's been a year, or some like, you know, things like that. But I don't know. I mean, I think we can try this with daylighting, but like if folks want to do this with sidewalks, I'd love for someone to step into that, and we can use some of the same infrastructure.
I'm just gonna flag, Eileen commented that there might be interest in partnering with the pedestrian council on that.
Totally.
So maybe that is an opportunity for sidewalks to do that with them, as well as, you know, other things. So
100%. And I think we're already partnered with them on daylighting. We've had several meetings with me, Nao, and Jay Swiderski, who's on the PAC, the Pedestrian Advisory Council. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a great opportunity to, you know, once we get daylighting up off the ground, if there's interest from us and from them, like this would be great.
And I just want to add that something Jay brought up is that these are also topics that are coming up during ANC meetings. And so I feel like by also, you know, like working with our ANC commissioners to really start like focusing on this could be like a good way for us to like spread the message, so it's not just something that's happening in Ward 6 or like just between all the individuals who are on these advisory councils.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Can whoever is driving the document go up to their response to the daylighting piece, or down? I don't know which it should be. Is there daylighting response number 7 or number 6? I couldn't tell. Maybe it was number 7, or no, I have 6B. Okay. The one thing I'm wondering too is, what is their process for determining, because this is not a TSI, right? Like this is just straight up following their laws. And I'm wondering how they are, like what their service level agreements are for rectifying these issues, and if that can be highlighted and how many are outside of the timeline. And then similarly, if you have 25 intersections where you have clear evidence that car drivers are parking there because there isn't hard infrastructure, like what is their game plan for actually implementing that hard infrastructure? Because the way that it's looking now, there are 2 options, which is signs or enforcement, which is like neither of those include hardened infrastructure as an option. And so I don't even know how they're thinking about making decisions about which intersections should be hardened in the first place. And so I think if y'all are putting together a letter with things that you'd like to discuss more, I'd like to see a little bit more rigor around the strategy and the decision making that they use to roll these things out, because it shouldn't need to be part of a major design and construction process for a high injury network. I mean, obviously that's where we want to put things, but that should already be happening with those high injury network projects. That should, like, this should be a separate work stream that happens outside of that, if that makes sense.
For sure. I think these are 2 good follow-ups. Is 1, how do hardening decisions get made? And 2, can we get a service level agreement to fix roadway signs? How long does it take them to actually, okay, once we've identified, hey, this is an illegal sign, like how long will it actually take you to fix it? Like Ashton referred to the TSI process. That is a totally broken process. It's like not the process that we should go into. Basically what that does is just like, it's a traffic safety input process where you say, hey, this place is unsafe. Then they'll go through their own criteria and only do 200 a quarter. So it may not even ever get looked at. And that's just the wrong process for this thing to go into. So I think it's actually like one thing that maybe we can press the director on is like, can we actually just get a number on, okay, once a sign has been determined to be like illegally placed, like, can we just get a number, like whether that's a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever, some number of days that this thing, someone is just going to go out there and move it and get it corrected.
Well, and ensuring that there is, you know, to the point in here about hardening decisions, like if you're only taking in, okay, enforcement and signs, like what is the next step to ensure that hardening happens? Like could we have a separate 311 request for, I know a lot of folks in the ANC community used to explicitly request bike corrals. And Naomi, I see your comment in the chat, what does hardening mean? So if you have a sign that's properly placed 25 feet from a crosswalk, that does not mean that someone won't park in that 25 feet. And so hardening the intersection for daylighting purposes makes it such that a car actually abides by the sign, because, you know, as we all know, if a driver is trying to find parking and none is available, and they see an opening, regardless of whether or not there's a sign there, they might take a chance and park there knowing that they'll probably get away with it, because by the time you submit your parking enforcement request to 311, they will have gotten their pizza and, you know, whatever else and driven away. Meanwhile, for, you know, those 20 minutes, people who are crossing are at increased risk. And so I wonder if there's a way, you know, should we be requesting scooter and bike parking corrals? Is that the appropriate path to ensuring that? Because I'm not confident that if they get a lot of enforcement requests or if they get a lot of sign requests, that actually leads to the hardening piece, which is the third kind of prong of that. But I think it's captured in the questions. I just wanted to pull that out as also an issue with the response that they gave around submitting through those 2 311 avenues.
I wonder if we bring up a third question of like, can we create a criteria for hardening daylighting? So basically like putting a planter or bike rack or a scooter corral, so that like a car physically can't park there. And maybe that's just like a certain number of 311 requests, maybe like,
I like that idea because it's quantifiable, give very clear, right? You know, it's like a clear cutoff of like, okay, at this point, whatever you've implemented isn't enough. So what are the solutions?
Right, exactly. Cool.
And whoever, right, whichever body takes on kind of oversight of daylighting, I think determining or informing that cutoff, you could do that via, once we start to collect data on reported violation.
Yeah, totally.
You kind of do some basic statistics of like, all right, what's the mean? You know, what are like the upper quartiles, et cetera, and then you determine your cutoff through that.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Cool. Anything else on daylighting? I think those are some good follow-ups for them. Okay. Next we've got, or actually, Nao, can you come back to? Yeah, there we go. So number 7, we've got, is there a process? Oh yeah, we just discussed that that's number 7. Oh yeah, this number 8 was one of mine. So DC has crews that remove cars from rush hour parking restricted areas during rush hour. So basically, like, so that cars can flow more smoothly. There's basically an extra lane. What that does is create an extra lane. during rush hour. But I know that a lot of bus lanes are obstructed as well. And I'm wondering, like, that, you know, DPW does the towing. Maybe this is something that we can bring up to DPW when we finally hear from them about snow as well. But DPW is the one that tows the cars, and they've gotten some instruction from someone, it's unclear who, that they should prioritize rush hour parking restrictions. But I don't think I've ever seen them actually tow a car from a bus lane. Because like right now, DDOT does the Clear Lanes project, which is just taking a picture of the car and sending them a ticket 2 weeks later. That doesn't do anything to actually clear the car out from the bus, like doesn't actually help the bus at that time. And that's where I was wondering, like, can we, I would like to drill into this a little bit, because if we're prioritizing like adding car lanes during rush hour, why aren't we also prioritizing getting you know, cars out of bus lanes as well, with those same towing assets? So this doesn't really answer the question, because this is only like in a reactive. It doesn't actually solve the problem for the bus that's trying to get down the bus lane. So I think if we can, maybe they've misunderstood this question. And maybe we can also, maybe this is also something that we can bring up with DPW. Yeah, another one of mine. Many smaller cities have what are highly successful with what are called BRTs. They're center running bus lanes. This is like done a lot in Latin America, but especially even in Richmond. Richmond is a much smaller city than us, and they've got a really successful BRT. And there's also other cities in Northern Virginia that have center running bus lanes. But it looks like they basically said that that's not in the cards, which is a bummer. K Street Transit Way was supposed to be a center running bus lane, but that got killed, unfortunately. I've got more questions about parking. How much money do we earn from parking on arterials? So it's roughly, looks like it's like roughly $30 million. Oh, it's maybe more than just arterials, but if we're earning $30 million from parking on arterials, like, is that worth the slowdown for, is that worth the slowdown from buses? That's basically what I was trying to get at. Yeah, and this is something that we can talk to more about with the bus team. There's a whole section on here about automated traffic enforcement cameras. That these are some of my questions as well. I don't like, this is a whole discussion that I want to have. We haven't had the conversation as a council about this. Let's just actually just skip this because I want to get to someone else's questions. If we go to 18, this was one of, I think, Kelly, this may have been yours. Considering the increasing rate of pedestrian deaths in DC, what changes is DDOT working on to address and improve these safety issues? Was this yours, Kelly?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool. I was a bit also underwhelmed with like, okay, so deploying high visibility crosswalks and installing audible pedestrian signals and installing no turn on red.
I was also a little confused because, the coverage has been pretty extensive about increasing issues.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if maybe they could explain what they mean by a decrease, and or is it just too much to ask them to say, yeah, there's an issue? I mean, it just
Yeah.
kind of felt like a denial, which kind of upset me.
Yeah.
So and hopefully I'm just misunderstanding.
Yeah.
But
So let's come back here and we can say like we think there is a real issue. Do you like?
that's fair. I mean, yeah. Yeah. And are you, if the trend is going up and these are the things that we're doing,
We're not doing enough then, right?
something's missing in the mix. And can we talk about what that could be?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the trend is still increasing. Still increasing and still overall way too high. No one should die on no pedestrian should be dying. Should die or be injured. Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, and then okay, so then coming back to our sidewalk discussion, or anything else that we should that we want to anything else that we want to follow up on here? And if folks want, again, to remember, like we'll send this out afterwards, please just add to this. This will be a nice guide for our conversation. Yeah, so then our sidewalk, so accessible, well-maintained sidewalks with appropriate curb cuts and intact pavement is essential to mobility and accessing public transit. Functioning public transit is moot without the most vulnerable and dependent are not able to access it. Yes. So DDOT's response, yeah, the 70%. This is where we can dig in on are in good to excellent condition. And I wonder too, like, so the 70%, even that 70% number might not be real. But then I wonder if there's something also here is just like, is the fact that 30% that are not in good to excellent condition, like, is that like that then also seems to be problematic? It's almost like kind of like bragging about a C- in my mind. I don't know, Lizzie, this is your question, right?
About the 70% of good
Yeah.
or excellent sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, look, I'm doubtful or dubious of 70% actually being accurate to begin with, but agree. It's just, and I think with all these responses, what we're lacking is a bold goal of 0 or 100%, regardless of what we're like, or, specific to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, okay, 70%, one, convince me that that's actually accurate. How are you assessing your sidewalks? How regularly? Who is assessing your sidewalks? Are they actually versed in what accessible means? Look, it's not even clear to me if accessible is incorporated into their definition of good or excellent condition.
Yeah. Zach, so I know Xavier is involved in this. Like Zach, were these responses by like your team, Zach, or by the director's team, or some combination?
A combination.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. So yeah, I feel like some of these. Yeah. I think these are all. I don't know if you have an answer to that, Zach. Lizzie's question of like, is accessibility actually factored into the criteria for good or excellent?
It is, in terms of like ADA compliance. There is, and I think Lizzie mentioned it earlier, our MAACDC team, which developed their pavement condition index to rate the condition of the sidewalk. And that is reviewed annually. And there was a big sidewalk assessment that was done. Well, it's reviewed in bigger chunks using cyclomedia and not cyclomedia. Sorry, it's been a long day, everybody. We have been using I can't think of the vehicles with the cameras on top to sort of capture data on our sidewalks and to see which ones are in compliance and which ones aren't. We've been using the Kiwi bots, so the robots, to go out to detect which sidewalks are compliant and which ones aren't. We use people, especially when we were looking at our sidewalk gap program to determine where we have gaps, but also at the same time, they were looking at sidewalk compliance too. Later in the fall, we're going to partner, we hope to partner with GW to also do like a sidewalk palooza to really get some eyes out there to determine which ones are compliant or not as well. But yes, that range of I believe it's like poor, fair, good, and excellent is a pretty big range though.
So Zach, when I look at the MAACDC map, I see a legend that tells me which sidewalks have been remediated and which are slated for repair, but I don't see it as telling me what DC's assessment of a given segment of sidewalk state is. So going back to like our earlier conversation around oversight and like, you know, helping promote accountability around this, it sounds like there's a data set or a database or a GIS tool somewhere that actually just documents the current assessment state of each. I think that would be very useful to see. I also now have more questions around what software is behind a Kiwi bot that is enabling it to make an accurate assessment of accessibility. How is a car with a camera making an accessibility assessment of a sidewalk? If one of these tools assesses a segment to be accessible, is that considered accessible, or is then there a validation by potentially a higher scrutiny mechanism? Like, these are all my follow-up questions to everything that you said. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And there is a level of transparency with that data too, when you talk about the actual conviction that we're looking at. But with all the things that I mentioned, all of those are sort of in combination with each other, because it does take a human element. But when we talk about a human element, we don't necessarily have that kind of human capital to get out there by itself. Like, we have to use a combination of any sort of new technologies, and we're exploring new technologies too to look at our sidewalks as well. But it can't replace humans quite yet, and humans having that sort of final oversight. So that's what we're hoping to get to, and hoping to get more of.
Yeah, so again, I would want to know if the car camera assesses the segment to be excellent. Is it just getting categorized as excellent, or what is the process, the SOP for validation? And how is that then getting mapped up to DC's overall plans for remediation?
No, fair question.
We had the folks from the sidewalk gap doing the sidewalk gap analysis come, but that was a while ago, and I wonder if we, after the director comes, like, this is another, like, you know, we kind of hone our questions and kind of come up with more after we talk about these with the director, but also like kind of have a more detailed follow-up with the sidewalk team, where we can ask kind of more specific technical questions, and kind of drill into this, because I think this is, obviously this is super important to us, that we get this, like, we get a real sense of where we are and have confidence in the data, and then also have like a real plan to fix it. Cool. Anything else on sidewalks that folks want to discuss? Cool. I have a section here on ATEs. I'll spend like 3 minutes on it, but I also want to spend 10 minutes talking about just talking generally about what we want to see going forward, and with future meetings. But automated traffic enforcement, at least in my mind, is a way for, so these are the cameras. DDOT has cameras for red lights, cameras for speed enforcement, and cameras for, I think, a few stop sign cameras. But basically, this, like, ATEs reduce crashes by 30%. Like, there's nothing that gets that type of, there's nothing that's like as good as that in terms of reducing crashes. Like, that is astronomically good, in my mind, because and they also reduce the severity of crashes, because if it's slowing people down, like, someone is significantly more likely to survive getting hit by a car at 20 miles per hour than at 40 miles per hour, or 30 miles per hour. And if this is slowing people down, like, this is a huge deal. It gets a bad rap because, like, the proceeds go into the general fund, and people think, oh, like, this is just like putting up a bunch of cameras to like fund DC government, but that's not, like, well, that may be the case in this, because it is going to the general fund, but it is also like making our streets significantly safer. And basically my questions for, I can just share my screen here. My questions here all revolved around, okay, if it's working, why aren't we doing more of it? And, some of that is politics, but, like, I think, like, there needs to be a voice, and feel free, these are all just my opinions. We've never discussed this as a council, like, and I would love to just get a temperature check to see if folks agree. But, like, ATEs don't cost that much, relative, like, a red light camera costing $100,000, like, that's a lot of money. But if it's reducing crashes by 30%, like 1 or 2 crashes, like, could cause like medical bills of $100,000, and put someone in the hospital for, like, multiple days, and, in the worst case, like, kill someone. So if it's like literally $100,000, like, that's a pretty solid investment to reduce injuries and deaths. So basically, I wanted to make the point, like, that I wanted to, like, just ask, like, hey, like, okay, if this is very good, which all signs point to that it is, like, in reducing crashes and injuries, like, why don't we put more of these in places? Like, so I asked, like, how many people need to be injured, and there's not really a criteria for that. They say that they move the cameras around based on need, and it has this, like, both reactive and proactive components, but it's not clear, like, why we need to be moving them around in the first place. Like, why don't we just have, this was my question, like, why don't we have ATEs on every arterial road segment and light, and because they're 213 speed cameras, only 56 red light cameras, but there are 7,000 intersections. And, you know, obviously some of these intersections are super small, but they're way more than 56 intersections that have crashes on them. If you pull up a crash map, there's like, you know, you basically every inch of DC is covered with a crash. And so there's that question that I kind of want to dig into of like, okay, if it only costs $100,000, why aren't we doing way more of these? Especially because they're generating revenue at the same time. They can kind of pay for themselves. So before, like, but like I ask these questions, like I have a viewpoint, but I would love to hear like what other folks think, because I don't want to represent this as like the MAAC's view if this is, if it's just me.
Your logic makes good sense to me. And well, I have the mic. I'm gonna have to sign off in about 3 minutes, and I won't interrupt the meeting again. So if you see me disappear, that's fine.
Cool. Naomi or Kelly, is that we can have a kind of more like a deeper discussion later, but I just wanted to get a kind of quick temperature check on this. Like, is this like, do you agree with this, you know, general logic or this general framing? Is we can like do a deeper dive on this, but in terms of like kind of bringing this up for the director, like I'd love to get your thoughts.
I do, Karthik, and I know that you know, vehicle speed has been an issue in the pedestrian deaths. I mean, you brought that up, so we could connect those two things.
Yeah, cool.
I don't really have anything additional here. I've mostly been listening because you all are pros at this. And yeah, I think that we have a good strategy, and yeah, no notes.
Okay, cool. Nice. So so we basically had gone through that quickly. We don't have a ton of time left, but I definitely want to keep it open for general comment. That's where I'm at. General comment. And we also didn't get to approve our minutes, so we can maybe do that at the next meeting. Or we also have a website that we can do a tour of. We also didn't talk about our capital project subcommittees that we can do next time. But I do want to just leave a couple more minutes, like other things that folks want to talk about in future meetings. I think we've got a nice like stream of things that we're still trying to get the DPW director. We're getting the DDOT director hopefully in May. That would be great if we can. We have a robust conversation about sidewalks that I think will be great. We've got a robust conversation about daylighting, and I'd like to have this robust conversation about automated traffic enforcement. Are there other things? And that DPW discussion will include snow. We'll focus on snow removal for sidewalks. Are there? And then we'll follow up with PFHEV as well. Are there other things that folks want to be thinking about or kind of just putting on the radar so that we can get the wheels turning? Anybody? No worries. And this is not just for like, so council first, but so if Lizzie, Naomi, and Kelly, if you don't have anything else that comes up, just also generally opening this up for other folks. So Ashton, Eileen, or Ra, are there other things that have come up on your radars that you think we should be we should be looking at?
Nothing from me. You know, I'm obsessed with pedestrian signal timing, but I think you guys have already done that.
Yeah, we'll continue to bring this. So the latest on pedestrian signal timing is that we think that it's 3.5 feet per second across the district. Is that true? Like,
I think that's their standard, but they, you know, I've had engineers say, oh, if you give me a specific place, you know, I may be able to lower that. And that's happened in Ward 3 where there are a lot of older people.
Yeah.
And, I reject the logic that it should only be where there are a lot of older or disabled people. It should be
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm not endorsing that.
And then
Um,
the standard, so like, is there a better standard, or like, is there a standard that you advocate for? Is it like 2.5 or 2, or like, what's the, like?
No, the way, I think, I filed comments with the US DOT when they were working on ProAg, because I thought the Access Board did a horrible job
Yeah.
on this issue. What I think is that the solution ultimately is there needs to be technology that can extend a signal for
Yeah.
someone who needs it.
Yeah.
And nobody's working on that, as far
Yeah.
as I know.
Sure.
But I think in the meantime, it's like they need to reduce it pretty significantly to, I would probably say, I think speed for someone using a walker is like 2.3 or 2.2 feet per second.
Yeah.
And that ought to be a goal until, and I know that's just a mean, that means there's plenty of people who can't even do that.
Yeah.
But I think next to wheelchairs, that's the second most common issue I see is people with walkers.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
can't make it across.
Yeah. So if we advocate for something, like, you think if we just plan a flight, I mean, so technology first, but in the absence of that, like, what we can advocate for now.
Yeah.
To
2.0, 2.2.
to
Just and I think we have to be honest or practical and recognize that's probably something they have to work on over the long haul.
Yeah.
And if they're forced to do it, that may make the technology come quicker.
Right.
I'll just add, the law in DC and several other states is that legally, if you begin with a walk signal, you have the right of way to finish crossing. You're not required to complete crossing the street.
Yeah.
Legally. But of course, on a practical level, drivers, don't slow down enough. They're not supposed to go through intersections at the speed limit either. It's illegal to do that, but that's never enforced.
Oh, I'd say that again. I didn't actually know that.
Under DC Municipal Regulation 18-2200.5, you have to slow down when you are going through an intersection. There's a bunch of other, you also have to slow down if you were at the crest of a hill, if you were at the opposite of a crest, I forget what you call that, the valley, if you're going downhill.
Yeah.
And there's several other criteria too, but that's ignored uniformly by everybody, and traffic engineering undermines it since they time signals for the speed limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
got it.
I didn't mean to derail us.
No. I mean, this is good for all of us to know, and I think eventually, once we get to 6 people, like, I would love for like more people to kind of take things and run with things. So like, I would love for someone to take this and run with.
Yeah.
But
I'll throw in Barnes Dance or diagonal crossing or dedicated, like fully dedicated intersections to pedestrian crossing, because I worry as we roll out more no red on red, we're going to have more people go around people stopped at red lights, even if things are, I don't know. I'd like to see more all-way pedestrian crossing. I don't know, Eileen, if you have any expertise on that, about whether that's actually a good idea, but
I know DDOT has criteria for using them. I have very mixed feelings about them because it often happens that pedestrians lose time. You have it's not just waiting longer, it's that you might have a longer walk signal at an intersection without a Barnes Dance than you would at an intersection with one, because of how they have to time the diagonal. I don't understand the intricacies of it, but I've seen walk time decrease
you
at
can't have nice
intersections.
things. Okay, fair enough.
No, I think it's worth considering. It's just, like I said, I'm just ambivalent.
Yeah.
Good point.
Cool. So it is now 7:01. I think we should adjourn. The main takeaway that if folks can, if you can, we'll send the directors or the DDOT responses, please, in yellow highlights, go through, add anything that any additional questions that you have, and we'll use that as a guide. Hopefully we'll get the director in May, and we'll use that as a guide for our conversations. for our conversation going forward. But other than that, I think we're good to adjourn. Thanks everybody for good discussion this month, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Everyone,
Thanks
take
all.
care.
Take care.